My name is Corvus Tain. I was a psyker. Unsanctioned, untrained, hunted. Now I am something worse. I am a Daemonhost, a human body deliberately possessed by a warp entity, bound by inquisitorial seals to serve the Imperium. I share my flesh with a creature of pure malice, locked in eternal combat for control of my own body. This is my service. This is my punishment. This is my existence. Let me tell you how it began. I was 23 when the black ships came for me. I'd hidden my abilities for years. Minor telekinesis, occasional precognition, the ability to sense emotions in others, nothing extreme, nothing that warranted the attention of the Imperium's witch hunters. But I made a mistake. During a raid by heretics on my hive city, I used my powers openly to save a group of civilians. I moved debris with my mind, shielded people with psychic barriers, things I'd sworn never to do in public. I saved 17 lives that day, and condemned myself. The arbitrators arrived within hours, followed by representatives of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. I was arrested, shackled with psi dampeners, thrown into a transport with 24 other captured psykers. Most were screaming, some were catatonic. A few were already showing signs of possession, their eyes gone black, voices speaking in tongues that hurt to hear. I stayed quiet, assessed my situation, looked for escape routes. There were none. We were bound for holy terror, to be evaluated by the Scholastica Psychana. Most psykers faced one of 3 fates: service as sanctioned psykers, sacrifice to maintain the Golden Throne, or immediate execution if deemed too dangerous. I'd hoped for sanction. I was controlled, disciplined, hadn't allowed my powers to corrupt me. I was wrong. Inquisitor Matthias Vogt intercepted our transport before we reached Terra. He was a tall man, gaunt, with augmetic eyes that glowed with a sickly green light. His armor was covered in purity seals and hexagrammic wards. He carried himself with the absolute authority of someone who answered to no one except the Emperor himself. He walked through our holding cells, examining each psyker with cold precision. Most he dismissed with a gesture. They'd continue to Terra for standard processing. He stopped at my cell. "This one," he said to his retinue. Corvus Tain. Age 23. Phaetograd psyker with demonstrated telekinetic and empathic abilities. No signs of corruption. Perfect. Perfect for what? I asked, my voice hoarse from days without proper water. He smiled. A thin, cruel expression. Perfection is rare among psykers. Most are weak, easily corrupted by the warp. But you have discipline, control, a strong will. That makes you valuable. For sanction, for something more important. He gestured, and his retinue opened my cell. I am offering you a choice, Corvus Tain. You can continue to Terra, where you will likely be sacrificed to the Golden Throne, your soul burned away to maintain the Astronomicon. A noble death, but death nonetheless. Or you can serve me directly. Become a weapon in humanity's war against chaos. Serve the Imperium, not as a sanctioned psyker, but as something far more powerful. I should have known better, should have heard the trap in his words, but I was 23, terrified and desperate to live. I accept, I said. His smile widened. Excellent. Welcome to my service, Corvus. You're about to become a Daemonhost. The word hit me like a physical blow. Daemonhost, a human deliberately possessed by a warp entity, bound by seals and wards to serve as a weapon. No, I said immediately. That's madness. Possession is controlled, Vogt interrupted. When done properly, with the right rituals and seals, a daemon can be bound within a human host without full possession. The host maintains consciousness, maintains control, mostly, and in exchange, gains access to warp powers far beyond any sanctioned psyker. And if the seals fail, Then you become fully possessed, and I will execute you immediately. But the seals won't fail. I have performed this ritual 17 times. 16 of my Daemonhosts remain in service, fully functional, completely loyal. What happened to the 17th? Hell lost his will, allowed the demon to win. I killed him myself. Voke leaned closer to my cell. But you won't lose, Corvus. You have the discipline, the strength. You'll maintain control, serve the Imperium, and live far longer than you would burning in the Golden Throne's furnace. He was lying. Not about the technical details. Inquisitors can legally create Daemonhosts under specific circumstances, but about what it would be like, about the cost. I didn't know that yet. I was just a young man who'd been offered life instead of death. I accept, I said again. Voke nodded. Then we begin immediately. They took me to his ship, a massive vessel called the Eternal Vigil, equipped with extensive facilities for dealing with warp phenomena. Deep in its hold was a chamber I'd later learn was called the Binding Room. It was a spherical space, 50 meters in diameter, every surface inscribed with hexagrammic wards and protective prayers. Chains hung from the ceiling, each link carved with banishment sigils. At the center was a throne of black iron, covered in spikes and restraints. They stripped me, shaved my head, painted my body with sacred oils and protective unguents. Then they chained me to the throne, wrists, ankles, neck, torso, each chain tight enough to restrict movement but not circulation. Voke stood before me, flanked by 6 other Inquisitors and a librarian from the Grey Knights. The presence of an Astartes Psyker should have comforted me. It didn't. The Grey Knight looked at me with something approaching pity. The ritual will take 6 hours, Voke explained. We will open your soul to the warp, invite a specific daemon to enter your body, then seal it inside with you. The daemon we've selected is Malthazon, a warp entity of the 3rd circle. Powerful enough to be useful, small enough to be controlled. Will it hurt? I asked. Immeasurably. Voke gestured, and his retinue began the ritual. They chanted in languages I didn't recognize. High Gothic mixed with something older, something that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. The wards on the walls began to glow with purple light. The temperature dropped precipitously. Then they cut me. Not deep, just surface wounds across my chest, arms, legs. Enough to draw blood that they collected in sanctified bowls. The blood was mixed with warp-touched materials, dust from demon corpses, fragments of cursed artifacts, things I couldn't identify. The Grey Knight librarian stepped forward. His psychic presence was overwhelming, pressing against my mind like a physical weight. He placed his hands on my head and pushed. My soul opened. I can't describe it properly. It was like a door inside my chest being torn open, exposing my inner self to something vast and terrible. I felt the warp pressing against my consciousness, felt entities in the Immersive notice me, felt their hunger. Then Voke spoke a name, Malthazon, and it came. The daemon flooded into me like acid poured into an open wound. It wasn't physical entry. It came through the opening in my soul, through the door the librarian had torn open. I felt it enter my consciousness, felt its presence slam into my mind. It was hate. Pure, distilled, absolute hate. Hate for humanity, hate for reality, hate for everything that wasn't the warp. It screamed inside my head, a sound that had no audio component but was deafening nonetheless. I am Malthazon. I am eternal. The seals activated. The Inquisitors completed their chant, and the hexagrammic wards throughout the chamber blazed with light. I felt the seals snap into place around my soul, not blocking the demon out, but locking it inside, trapping it within my body, within my consciousness, unable to leave, unable to fully possess. The daemon screamed louder. It raged, throwing itself against the seals, trying to break free. But the wards held. The ritual was perfect. I was a cage, a prison, and the prisoner was inside me, locked in with no escape. The pain was indescribable. Not physical pain, though my body was burning, my skin blistering from the warp energy contained within me, but psychic agony. The demon was fighting me for control, trying to seize my limbs, my voice, my thoughts. I fought back, pushed against its presence with everything I had, my will against its hate. We locked in stalemate. "The binding is complete," Voke announced. His voice seemed distant, as if coming from another world. "Corvus Tain, you are now a sanctioned Daemonhost, in service to the holy Ordos of the Inquisition. You will serve the Imperium, contain the daemon Malthazon, and deploy its power against the enemies of mankind." I tried to speak. My mouth moved, but the words that came out weren't mine. "I will devour you, mortal. I will feast on your soul. I will—" I clamped down, forcing the demon back. My voice returned. "I understand." "Good." Voke approached, placing a hand on my shoulder. The touch burned. His fingers were covered in sanctified oils that reacted violently with the warp energy now saturating my body. "Welcome to service, Corvus. You'll find that containing Malthazon requires constant vigilance. Never sleep deeply, never let your guard down, never stop fighting. The moment you weaken, it will try to seize control." "How long?" I gasped. "How long will you serve?" "Until you die, or until the demon wins, whichever comes first." They released me from the throne. I collapsed immediately. My legs wouldn't support me. The demon was fighting me, trying to make me fall, trying to humiliate me. I forced myself to stand, took one step, then another. Each movement was a battle, my will against the demon's interference. "Impressive," the Grey Knight said. His voice was deep, resonant. "Most new hosts can't walk for days. Your discipline is exceptional." "Have to." "Be?" I managed. "Or I'd already be dead." They took me to a containment cell, a small chamber with walls covered in protective wards. It would be my home when not actively serving. I sat on the metal floor, back against the wall, and focused on containing the demon. It was still screaming, still raging, but I'd established basic control. I could move my body, could speak, could think my own thoughts. But I could also feel it. Every second, a presence in my mind that wasn't me, a consciousness pressing against my own, looking for weaknesses. "You cannot hold me forever, mortal," it whispered in my thoughts. "I am eternal. You are finite. Eventually you will weaken, and I will be free." "Then I'll make eventually last as long as possible," I said aloud. The demon laughed, a sound like breaking glass inside my skull. "We shall see." That was 30 years ago. I'm 53 now. I've been sharing my body with Malthazon for 3 decades. 3 decades of constant vigilance, constant warfare, constant struggle for control of my own flesh. If you're finding this story as horrifying as my reality, hit that like button and subscribe. Comment below where you're watching from today. I want to know who else understands what it means to fight a war that never ends. The daemon has never stopped trying, never rested, never tired, because it can't tire. It's a warp entity, sustained by energies I barely comprehend. It doesn't need sleep, doesn't need food, doesn't need anything except the opportunity to break free. And it's inside me, always, forever. Let me tell you what that's like. The first year was the worst, not because the demon fought harder. It's always fought with absolute commitment, but because I didn't know how to fight back effectively. Every moment was agony. The demon would seize control of my hand, make me claw at my own face. I'd force it back, regain control, then it would attack from another angle. Take my voice, make me speak obscenities and threats. I'd clamp down on that and it would assault my thoughts, flooding my mind with images of violence and corruption. Sleep was impossible. The moment I'd start to drift off, Malthazon would surge, trying to seize control while my consciousness was weakened. I'd snap awake, gasping, fighting to maintain control. Inquisitor Voke watched these early struggles with cold assessment. "You're doing well," he'd say during inspections. "Most hosts lose control multiple times in the first month. You've maintained coherence perfectly." "It's trying to kill me," I'd gasp. "Of course it is. That's what demons do. But you're stronger. Keep proving it." The training began in month 2. Voke needed me functional, not just contained. That meant learning to use the demon's power while maintaining control. They'd bring me to secure chambers and order me to channel Malthazon's abilities. Warp fire, telekinetic force beyond my natural abilities, psychic attacks that could shatter minds. The process was excruciating. I'd have to lower my guard slightly, allow the daemon more access to my body, let its power flow through me. But not too much. If I gave it too much freedom, it would try to seize full control. "More," Malthazon would scream in my mind. "Let me fully manifest. Let me show my true power." "No," I'd say through gritted teeth. "This much. No more." "You limit me. You couch me. I am greater than this flesh." "You're a prisoner. Act like it." The daemon would rage, but I'd maintain control. Channel just enough power to complete the exercise, then clamp down again, forcing it back into containment. By month 6, I'd developed a routine, a mental discipline that let me coexist with Malthazon without losing myself. I visualized my consciousness as a fortress. The demon was contained in the deepest dungeon, bound by chains of will. It could scream, could rage, could throw itself against the walls, but it couldn't break free unless I allowed it. But I could always hear it. Every moment of every day, it was there, whispering, threatening, bargaining. "Let me free, Corvus, and I will grant you power beyond imagination. No, I will show you the truth of the warp, the beauty of chaos. And I will give you anything you desire. Anything. No? Then I will break you, slowly, eternally. I will wear you down until you have nothing left." This was my existence, an endless conversation with a creature that despised me, locked in my own head, unable to escape its voice. Year 2, Volk deployed me for the first time. The mission was straightforward. Eliminate a cult of chaos worshippers who'd established a stronghold on an industrial world. The cult leader was a sorcerer of considerable power, protected by warp-touched bodyguards. Conventional forces had failed. Sanctioned psychers had been corrupted or killed. Voke needed something more powerful. He needed me. The attack came at dawn. Voke's retinue breached the stronghold's outer defenses while I was held in reserve, locked in a transport with a dozen armed guards watching me constantly. When the cult sorcerer revealed himself, channeling warp energies that were killing our troops, Voke gave the order. "Corvus, deploy. Full manifestation authorized." The guards unlocked my restraints. I stepped from the transport and walked toward the battle. Then Voke spoke the words that loosened the seals. I felt them release, not fully, but partially. The chains holding Malthazon loosened and the demon surged. "Finally!" it screamed in joy. "Finally, I am free to—" "You're not free," I said aloud. "You're deployed. There's a difference." Power flooded through me. Warp energy that made my skin burn, that set my eyes glowing with unnatural light. I felt the daemon's strength flowing through my limbs, felt its knowledge of warp manipulation integrating with my consciousness. We became synchronized, not merged. I was still me, Malthazon was still itself, but operating in terrible harmony. I raised my hand, and warp fire erupted from my palm. green flames that burned with unnatural heat, that consumed not just flesh but souls. The cultists in my path died screaming, their bodies reduced to ash. The sorcerer turned his attention to me, recognized what I was. His eyes widened in terror. A Daemonhost. The Inquisition brings a Daemonhost. He hurled warp lightning at me. It struck my chest and dissipated. Malthazon's nature made me resistant to such attacks. I walked forward, feeling the daemon's glee as we approached. It wanted to kill, wanted to destroy, wanted to feed on the sorcerer's fear. Let it. Just this once, our purposes aligned. The sorcerer died badly. Malthazon's power tore him apart from the inside, unmade his body at a molecular level, scattered his corrupted soul into the warp, where greater daemons would devour it. When it was done, when the stronghold was cleansed and the cultists dead, Vork spoke the words that retightened the seals. The daemon's power receded. I felt the chains snap back into place, felt Malthazon being forced back into containment. "No," it screamed, "you promised me freedom." "I promised nothing," Vork said coldly. "Corvus, report." I collapsed to my knees, gasping. The effort of channeling that much power, of maintaining control while the demon had been partially released, had nearly broken me. "Mission accomplished," I managed. "Excellent. You're dismissed. Return to containment." They dragged me back to my cell. I lay on the floor, trembling, while Malthazon raged in my mind. "I had them. I was killing them. Why did you stop me?" "Because the mission was complete." "There could have been more. I could have killed more." "We killed everyone who needed to die. That's enough. It's never enough. I am hunger. I am endless. I need more." "Then you're going to starve." The demon's rage was overwhelming, battering against my consciousness like waves against a cliff. But I held firm. The fortress in my mind remained intact. This became the pattern of my service. Months of containment, constant struggle, then brief deployments where I'd channeled the daemon's power against the Imperium's enemies. Each deployment was a risk. Each time the seals loosened, Malthazon would try to seize full control. And each time, I'd barely managed to maintain dominance. Year 5. I killed my first possessed Astartes. The Chaos Space Marine was a massive warrior, his armor corrupted by warp energies, his body enhanced by demonic pacts. He'd been slaughtering Vork's troops with contemptuous ease. Vork deployed me, loosened the seals, let Malthazon partially manifest. The Chaos Marine saw me and laughed. "A demon host? Pathetic. You're a slave to the corpse worshippers." "And you're a slave to the dark gods," I replied. "At least I'm aware of my chains." We fought. The Marine was stronger, faster, more experienced, but I had something he didn't. Perfect synchronization between Psyker and demon. I could channel warp powers with a precision he couldn't match. I tore him apart, piece by piece, made him suffer before the end. Malthazon loved it. For once, we were in complete agreement. The Chaos Marine deserved agony. When it was done, when his corrupted soul was banished, I felt something disturbing. Satisfaction. Not from defeating an enemy of the Imperium, but from the kill itself, from the violence. The daemon noticed. "Yes, you enjoyed that. We enjoyed that together. Against who better than those on Earth?" He clearly. "Shut up. You're becoming more like me, Corvus. Slowly, ineffably." "I'm nothing like you. Not yet, but give it time. If this is making you realize how thin the line is between hero and monster, please like this video and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you think Corvus can hold on, or if he's already lost. Year 10. I'd been a demon host for a decade. I'd killed hundreds of chaos cultists, dozens of possessed individuals, even 2 other demon hosts whose Inquisitors had lost control of them. I was effective, valuable, the perfect weapon, but the demon was learning. That was the problem. Malthazon had spent 10 years inside my mind. It knew my thought patterns, knew my memories, knew my fears and weaknesses and desires. It knew me better than anyone alive. And it was using that knowledge. Your mother, it whispered one night. Katrina Tane, dead for 15 years now. Do you remember her face? Stop. She had kind eyes, brown like yours. She loved you. Wanted you to live a normal life. Stop. How disappointed she'd be, seeing what you've become, a monster wearing her son's face. Stop. But she doesn't know, does she? She died believing you were executed for being a psyker. A clean death, honorable. She never knew you'd become this. I screamed, actually screamed aloud, something I rarely did. The demon was right. My mother had died not knowing what I'd become. And that was a mercy. Malthazon laughed. I found a weakness. How interesting. It began using my memories against me. Would speak in my mother's voice, would recall conversations from my childhood, would use my own past to torment me. Remember when you were 8, when you first manifested your powers? You moved a toy across the room, and she smiled. Told you it was special. She had no idea what it meant. Shut up. She should have drowned you then, would have saved so much suffering. Shut up. The demon had found a way to hurt me beyond simple threats. It weaponized my own memories, turned my past into torture. Year 15. Halfway through my service, I'd started losing time. Not from the daemon taking control, I'd maintained that boundary perfectly, but from mental exhaustion. The constant vigilance, the endless warfare, the decades of never resting. I'd be performing some task, then suddenly hours would have passed with no memory of them. My body had completed the tasks, routine maintenance, physical exercise, meals, but my consciousness had skipped. The inquisitorial medici examined me. You're experiencing cognitive fatigue, they explained. Your mind is partially shutting down to protect itself from the constant stress of containment. Is it dangerous? To you? Yes. To the containment? Potentially. If you lose too much cognitive function, you may not be able to maintain control of the daemon. So what do I do? Continue serving. There's no alternative. You're bound to this existence until death. That was when I truly understood. There was no end to this except dying. I would fight this war every day, every hour, every moment, until my body failed or the demon won. I was 38 years old. I could potentially live to 80 or 90 with proper care. That meant 50 more years of this. The thought was crushing. Malthazon sensed my despair. Finally, you're beginning to understand. This is forever, Corvus, forever. I know. Then let go. End the suffering. Give me control, and I'll make it stop. Why? Why continue this agony? Because the Imperium needs me to. The Imperium doesn't care about you. You're a tool, a weapon. They'll use you until you break, and then discard you. I know. I don't care. This is my duty. The daemon fell silent for a moment. Then, you're insane. More insane than I am. Probably. Year 20. I was 43 years old. I'd been a Daemonhost for 2 decades. The daemon had stopped trying to break me through force. Instead, it tried bargaining. Let me manifest just once more, it would whisper. Fully, completely. I'll show you such power. Then I'll return to containment willingly. Liar. I swear by the dark gods, whose oaths are worth nothing. No. Then let me speak to others, through you. I'll be good, I promise. No, let me influence your decisions, just slightly, guide you toward certain choices. Absolutely not. Every request denied, every bargain rejected. The demon was trying to find any concession I'd make, any crack in my defenses. I gave it nothing. But I was wearing down. 20 years of constant vigilance was taking its toll. I was tired in ways that sleep couldn't fix, tired in my soul. And Malthazon knew it. Year 23, something changed. I woke one morning, though I barely slept anymore, just brief periods of semi-consciousness, and realized I couldn't remember my father's name. I knew I'd had a father, knew he'd been a manufactorum worker on my homeworld, but his name was gone. Just gone from my memory. I searched for it, digging through decades-old memories. Nothing. The information had been deleted, overwritten, or locked away somewhere I couldn't access. Malthazon was silent, unusually silent. What did you do? I demanded internally. Nothing. Your mind is fragmenting. 23 years of containing me, of constant warfare, of never resting. Your memories are degrading. You're losing yourself. You're lying. Am I? Then tell me, what was your father's name? I couldn't. The memory was gone. Over the following weeks, I noticed more gaps. Small things at first. The name of a childhood friend, the color of my first school uniform, the taste of a specific food I'd loved as a child. Then, larger things. An entire year of my adolescence was just missing. I knew it had happened, knew I'd been 14 at some point, but I couldn't remember any specific events from that year. Your mind is cannibalizing itself, Malthazon explained, its voice almost sympathetic. To maintain the constant vigilance necessary to contain me, your brain is sacrificing non-essential memories, using that cognitive capacity for containment instead. Can it be stopped? No, it's automatic. Survival mechanism. Eventually you'll forget everything that isn't necessary for containing me. So, I'll lose my entire past? Most likely, but you'll remain functional. You'll remember how to contain me, how to fight, how to serve. That's what matters to your Inquisitor. I reported this to Vogue during the next inspection. He listened, made notes, showed no emotional reaction. Can you still maintain containment? He asked. Yes. Can you still deploy when ordered? Yeah. Then your memory loss is irrelevant. Continue your service. That was it. No concern for my deteriorating mind, no attempt at treatment, just confirmation that I was still useful as a weapon. Malthazon laughed in my mind. See? You're a tool, nothing more. I know. And you accept that? I accepted it 23 years ago. You 25. The memory loss accelerated. I couldn't remember my homeworld's name anymore. Couldn't remember my mother's face. Just knew she'd existed. Entire swaths of my past were now blank spaces. But Malthazon was right. I could still contain it, could still fight, could still serve. The memories necessary for that function remained intact. I was becoming less of a person and more of a purpose. A consciousness defined entirely by its singular function, contain the demon. You're becoming like me, Malthazon whispered, a being of pure purpose. I exist to corrupt and destroy, you exist to contain me. We're mirrors. Shut up. No personal history, no human connections, no identity beyond your function. How is that different from being a daemon? I'm still human. Are you? What makes you human? Memories you don't have, emotions you've suppressed, connections you've abandoned? You're a consciousness in a body, fighting an eternal war. That's demon-like behavior, Corvus. I'm still human, I repeated, but with less certainty. Year 26. First serious containment breach. I was being deployed against a chaos cult when something went wrong. Voke loosened the seals as usual, but this time Malthazon surged harder than ever before. It broke through my mental fortress. Not completely. The inquisitorial seals held, but enough to seize control of my body. For 17 seconds, I was a passenger in my own flesh. I watched through my eyes as Malthazon used my hands to tear apart cultists, used my voice to scream blasphemies, used my power to wreak devastation beyond what the mission required. Then, I regained control, shoved the demon back, re-established containment. We established containment. Voke immediately ordered full restraint. His guards swarmed me, locked me inside dampening shackles, dragged me back to my cell. Explain, Voke demanded once I was secured. It broke through, I said, my voice hoarse. 17 seconds of autonomous action, then I contained it again. Cause? Unknown. Possibly mental fatigue, possibly the daemon has grown stronger. Can your seals hold? Yes. The inquisitorial bindings are intact. I'm still the primary controller. But there are cracks, weaknesses. Voke consulted with his retinue. They performed additional rituals, reinforced the seals, added extra hexagrammic wards to my containment cell. But we all knew the truth. I was degrading. 26 years of containment had worn me down. The fortress in my mind had cracks. It's only a matter of time, Malthazon whispered gleefully. You're failing, Corvus. Slowly, but inevitably. Then I'll fail slowly. Decades more if necessary. You don't have decades. You have years. Maybe less. If you're wondering how long someone can fight before they break completely, hit that like button, subscribe to see if Corvus survives, and comment below, how long could you maintain this battle? Year 28. My personality began changing. I'd always been disciplined, controlled, focused, but now I was becoming colder, more mechanical. My responses to situations were purely functional, devoid of emotional content. The Medici noticed. You're exhibiting signs of severe emotional suppression, they reported. Likely a coping mechanism for the sustained psychological stress. Isn't problematic. For containment? No. You're still functional. For your humanity? Yes. You're losing affect, losing the ability to feel normal emotions. Define normal. Joy, sadness, fear, love, the standard range of human experience. I considered this. I haven't felt joy in decades. Sadness is constant but suppressed. Fear is ever-present, and love... I trailed off. I don't remember what that feels like. That's what we mean. You're becoming emotionally flat. If this continues, you'll lose all affective response. Will I still be able to contain the daemon? Probably. Containment is cognitive, not emotional. Then it doesn't matter. The Medici made notes and left. No treatment offered, no concern expressed, just documentation that their weapon was still functional despite losing its humanity. Malthazon found this hilarious. You're becoming like a servitor, consciousness without feeling, function without purpose beyond function. Good. Emotions are weaknesses you can exploit. But they're also what makes you human. Without them, you're just a biological machine. Fine. I'll be a machine. Machines don't break from psychological pressure. You already are broken, Corvus. You just haven't accepted it yet. Year 30. 3 decades as a demon host. I was 50 years old. I'd spent more of my life as a host than as a normal human. This existence was more familiar than my original life, and I was failing. The containment breaches were becoming more frequent. Not long, never more than a few seconds, but regular. Once a month, sometimes more, Malthazon would break through, seize control briefly. Then I'd force it back. Voke was concerned but hadn't terminated me. I was still too useful, still effective in combat. The breaches were problems, but manageable problems. "You're dying," Malthazon stated one day. Not gloating, just observing. Eventually. No, I mean specifically. Your body is degrading faster than normal aging would explain. Containing me is burning you out. Your cellular structures are breaking down. Your organs are showing wear beyond your chronological age. You'll be dead by 60, probably earlier. Good. Less time to suffer. You'd welcome death. I've welcomed it for 20 years. But I won't seek it. Won't give up. Won't surrender. Emergently. Even though you're losing? Even though I'm winning? You're not winning. You're contained, still. Always. For now. But when you die, these seals will fail, and I'll be free to find a new host. Then the Inquisition will kill you. Maybe. Or maybe I'll escape. Either way, I'll be free of this cage. The demon had a point. My death would end my suffering, but it would also release Malthazon. At least temporarily. Voke would have to perform a banishment, which might not succeed. My existence was preventing the daemon from escaping. Even in death, I'd serve. Year 32. I stopped speaking except when absolutely necessary. Thought. Not because I couldn't speak. The demon hadn't taken that ability. But because speaking required thought, and thinking was becoming difficult. My mind was fragmenting more severely. Sometimes I'd forget where I was mid-sentence. I'd lose the thread of conversations, forget what I was trying to say, repeat myself without realizing. The Medici ran cognitive tests. Severe degradation, they confirmed. Your higher cognitive functions are impaired. Memory, reasoning, language processing, all declining. Containment? Still functional. You maintain control of the diamond perfectly, but everything else is failing. Expected timeline for complete cognitive collapse? 5 to 10 years. You'll reach a point where you can't think coherently about anything except containing Malthazon. So, I'll become a single-purpose organism. Essentially, yes. I accepted this. Accepted that my mind was being sacrificed to maintain containment. Accepted that I'd lose everything except the one function I was designed for. Malthazon was strangely quiet about this development. Year 35. I had a visitor. Another demon host. One of Voke's other bound servants. This one containing a demon called Azagor. The host's name was Marcus, and he'd served for 40 years. They brought him to my cell for what Voke called peer consultation. Marcus looked at me with eyes that glowed with barely contained warp energy. 35 years, he said. You're doing well. Am I? You're alive. That's more than most achieve. He paused. I'm told you're struggling. Containment breaches, cognitive decline. It happens to all of us. The demons wear us down, not through force, but through persistence. How do you manage it? I don't. Not really. I exist. I contain. I serve. That's all. He leaned closer. The secret is accepting that you've already lost. You lost the moment they bound the daemon inside you. This isn't a fight you can win. It's just a fight you can prolong. That's bleak. That's realistic. I've been doing this for 40 years, Corvus. I've seen dozens of hosts fail. The ones who think they can win, they break fastest. The ones who accept the inevitable, who just commit to lasting as long as possible, they endure. So I should give up on winning. You should accept that winning isn't possible. This is damage control. How long can you last? How much service can you provide before you fail? That's the only question that matters. He left after 20 minutes. Vok's experiment in peer support. It was the most depressing conversation I'd ever had, and the most honest. Malthazon broke the silence afterward. He's right. You've already lost. The question is how long you can pretend otherwise. Then, I'll pretend forever. You don't have forever. You have years, maybe a decade. Then you fail, and I'm free. We'll see. Year 37. My body began failing along with my mind. Chronic pain in my joints. The warp energy contained within me was damaging my physical structure. Skin lesions that wouldn't heal. Internal bleeding that the Medici had to treat weekly. I was 54 years old and falling apart. Your body is rejecting the demon's presence, the Medici explained. Even with the seals, the warp energy is toxic to biological tissue. Normally, the containment rituals prevent this, but 37 years is longer than most hosts survive. How long do I have, physiologically? Maybe 10 years, but cognitive collapse will likely occur first. 10 years, a decade more of this suffering, then death. Malthazon whispered, "Let me go, Corvus. End this. You've served long enough. Just release the seals, let me manifest, and Vok will kill both of us. It'll be over in seconds." Now, why? What's the point? You're dying anyway. Because those 10 years matter. Every day I contain you is another day. You can't hurt anyone else. You're torturing yourself for nothing. I'm torturing myself for the Imperium. There's a difference. If this level of dedication to duty is hitting you hard, please like and subscribe. Comment if you think this sacrifice is worth it, or if it's just madness. I need to know I'm not alone in this. Year 40, I reached the 4-decade mark. I'd been a Daemonhost for 40 years. I'd served Inquisitor Vok across hundreds of missions. I'd killed thousands of the Imperium's enemies. I'd contained Malthazon for longer than most hosts survived. Vok came to my cell personally to acknowledge this milestone. "Corvus," he said, 40 years, exceptional service, you've exceeded all expectations. I said nothing. Speaking was difficult now, thoughts hard to form. "The demon remains contained?" he asked. "Yes," I managed. "Good. Continue your service. The Imperium requires your sacrifice." He left. No gratitude, no recognition of what I'd endured, just confirmation that I was still useful. Malthazon laughed weakly. Even it sounded tired. 40 years, both of us prisoners, both of us suffering. You deserve it. I had no answer. Year 41. I stopped sleeping entirely. Not because I couldn't, though sleep had been difficult for decades, but because sleeping and waking had become indistinguishable. My dreams, when they occurred, were identical to my waking consciousness. I'd be fighting Malthazon in my mental fortress, holding it in containment, maintaining the seals. Whether my eyes were open or closed, whether my body was awake or sleeping, the experience was the same. There was no rest, no escape, just constant, eternal vigilance. "Your consciousness has become singular," the Medici explained. "You no longer distinguish between sleep and waking states. Your entire existence is dedicated to containment. Nothing else remains." Is that sustainable? Physically, no. You'll die from the strain. But mentally, you've achieved what we call purpose singularity. Your consciousness exists for one function only. How long? Weeks, maybe months. Your body is failing rapidly now. I was 58 years old. I looked 80. My skin was grey, covered in sores that leaked warp-tainted ichor. My hair, what remained, was white. My eyes were sunken, glowing faintly with reflected warp energy. I was dying, finally. Balthazar sensed it too. Almost over, Corvus. Soon you'll fail, and I'll be free. The seals will hold. Will they? When you're dead, who maintains them? Voke can reinforce them, but there will be moments, seconds maybe, when they're weak. I'll escape in those seconds. Won't let you. How will you stop me? You'll be dead. Don't care if I'm dead. Only care that you're contained. The demon fell silent. For the first time in 41 years, it had nothing to say. Year 41, month 3. Voke deployed me one final time. A chaos incursion threatened an entire planet. Demons had breached into real space, a keeper of secrets was leading the assault, and conventional forces were being slaughtered. Voke needed heavy weapons. He needed me. They carried me to the deployment zone. I could no longer walk unassisted. My body was too damaged, too worn. But I could still contain Malthazon, still channel its power when the seals were loosened. The battlefield was apocalyptic. Demons everywhere. Lesser entities of Slanesh cackling with mad glee as they slaughtered Imperial Guard regiments. And at the center, the Keeper of Secrets. A towering entity of impossible beauty and terrible cruelty. Voke loosened my seals. Malthazon surged with more force than ever before. It broke through my weakened defenses, seized control of my body, began manifesting. For 90 seconds, I was no longer in control. I watched as the demon used my flesh to attack. Warp fire erupting from my hands. Psychic attacks tearing through the enemy forces. But it wasn't helping. It was just killing. Indiscriminately, friend and foe alike. I fought back. Threw everything I had left against the daemon's control. My will, weakened, fractured, barely coherent against its eternal malice. I regained control, barely, just enough to focus the attacks on actual enemies. Together, because I needed its power, because I had no choice, we fought the Keeper of Secrets. The battle lasted hours, warp entity against bound warp entity. My body was just the conduit, the battlefield, the prison that contained both of us. We won, barely. The Keeper of Secrets was banished, its physical form destroyed, its essence forced back into the Immersive. And I collapsed. My body had nothing left. I'd burned through every reserve, pushed beyond every limit. Ock stood over me as I lay in the scorched earth. Corvus, status, failing, I whispered. Body, failing, can't maintain much longer. Can you contain the demons? For now, not much longer. Then you've served well. Prepare for final rites. He walked away, left me lying there, dying, still containing the demon with the last dregs of my will. Malthazon whispered, "It's over, finally over. You can let go now." "No, you're dying anyway. Let me go. Let me be free for just a moment before they banish me." "No, please," for the first time the demon begged. "Please, Corvus. 41 years I've been in this cage. Let me see the warp one more time before the end. Just a moment. A single moment of freedom." "No, never. You stay, contained, until the Inquisitors banish you properly. You're crueler than any daemon, you know that?" Good. They carried me back to the ship, back to my cell. Began preparations for the final banishment ritual. I had hours left, maybe a day. My body was shutting down, organs failing one by one. But I maintained containment. Even as I died, I kept the fortress intact, kept the chains tight, kept Malthazon imprisoned. Year 41, Month 3, Day 17. My last day alive. I lay on the floor of my cell, unable to move. Medici worked around me, monitoring my vital signs, recording data for future research into Daemonhost longevity. Voke entered with the Grey Knight's librarian who'd helped bind Malthazon 4 decades ago. They would perform the banishment the moment I died, ensuring the daemon couldn't escape. Corvus, Voke said formally, you have served the Imperium with distinction for 41 years. Your sacrifice will be remembered. I wanted to say something. Wanted to tell him it wasn't worth it, that no one should ever become a demon host, that this existence was hell beyond description. That I'd lost speech, could only lie there, dying, still containing the demon. Malthazon's voice was quiet now, almost gentle. We're both dying, Corvus. When your body fails, the seals fail, and I'll be banished back to the warp. We'll both cease to exist in this plane. Was it worth it? 41 years of suffering? For what? For the Imperium. The Imperium doesn't care. Doesn't know your name. Will forget you existed the moment you're gone. Don't care? Then you're more devoted than any daemon, more fanatical than any cultist. You're insane, Corvus Tane. Yes, my vision was fading, the cell walls becoming dim, but I could still feel the daemon. Still maintained the mental fortress, even as my consciousness began to fail. I hate you, Malthazon whispered. I know, but I also respect you. You never broke, never surrendered, never gave me a single moment of freedom. You were a perfect prison. Thank you. This wasn't a compliment. I know. My heart stopped. I felt it. The final beat. Then, nothing. My consciousness fragmented, the fortress beginning to collapse. Malthazon screamed, not in triumph, but in terror. It didn't want to be banished. Didn't want to return to the warp where greater demons would devour it for its failure. The Grey Knight librarian began the banishment ritual. I heard the words through dying consciousness, high Gothic mixed with psychic forcing, compelling the daemon to leave reality. Malthazon struggled, fought, tried to cling to my dying flesh. But I'd held it for 41 years. Even in death, even with my consciousness failing, I held it just long enough for the banishment to complete. The demon was torn from my body, cast back into the Imperium, screaming all the way down. And I was free. If you've made it this far through this nightmare, please hit that like button. Subscribe to remember Corvus Tane, who suffered for 41 years so a demon couldn't hurt anyone else. Comment below with your thoughts on whether this sacrifice means anything. I need to know others witnessed this story. My consciousness faded. No heaven, no hell, no afterlife I could perceive. Just cessation. The endless war finally over. I'd won. Not by defeating the daemon. It would return to the warp, would try to possess another host eventually. But by containing it for 4 decades, by denying it freedom for all that time, by making every day of its existence as miserable as it made mine. That was victory enough. Corvus Tane died at age 58, having served as a sanctioned Daemonhost for 41 years. His body was burned with all appropriate rites. His name was recorded in the Inquisitorial archives as effectively loyal until termination. Inquisitor Voke requisitioned a new psyker to create a replacement Daemonhost within the month. The cycle continued. 5 years after Corvus Tane's death, Inquisitor Matthias Voke stood before a new prisoner. The young man was 21 years old, a captured unsanctioned psyker with demonstrable abilities in pyrokinesis. His name was Darius Cole, and he was terrified. "You face execution," Voke explained in his cold, clinical tone. "Your psychic abilities are too dangerous to leave uncontrolled, and you're too old for proper sanctioning. The penalty for unsanctioned psychery is death. Please, Darius begged. "I've never hurt anyone. I've kept my powers hidden. I just want to live. Then I offer you an alternative. Serve me. Become a Daemonhost, a bound weapon in service to the Imperium." Darius's face went pale. Daemonhost? That's possession. That's inviting damnation. Controlled possession, bound by inquisitorial seals. You'll maintain consciousness, maintain control, mostly. And in exchange, you'll live. You'll serve humanity's war against chaos. For how long? Until you die or fail. My previous Daemonhost served for 41 years before his body finally gave out. 41 years. Darius couldn't imagine it. 41 years sharing his body with a demon. "What was he like?" Dory asked. "Your previous host?" Voke consulted his data slate, pulling up Corvus Tane's file. Disciplined, strong-willed, he maintained perfect containment for decades, suffered extensive psychological and physical degradation, but never surrendered control to the daemon. He's considered one of the most successful Daemonhost cases in recent inquisitorial history. Was he happy? The question seemed to surprise Voke. Happy? He was a weapon. Weapons don't need happiness. They need functionality. And Corvus was extraordinarily functional. But as a person, Helmer stopped being a person years before his death. He became a purpose, a singular function, contain the demon. That's what you'll become if you accept this role. Darius considered. Death now, or decades as a living prison for a warp entity. Neither option was good. But one option was life. Horrible life, but life nonetheless. "I accept," he said quietly. Voke nodded. "Then we begin immediately. You'll be bound with a demon called Thessakor. The preparations will take 3 days. 3 days. Darius spent them in a containment cell, given basic information about what to expect, taught rudimentary mental disciplines for maintaining control. He was also given access to Corvus Tane's personal logs, recordings the previous host had made, documentation of his experience. Darius listened to them in chronological order, hearing Corvus's voice change over 41 years. The young man at the beginning, frightened but determined. The middle years, strained, tired, fighting constantly. The final years, barely coherent, speech degraded, personality eroded, until only function remained. The last log entry was short. Year 41. Still contained, still serving. Everything else, gone. Just this. Just containment. Forever. Darius felt ice in his stomach. This was his future. This was what he was agreeing to. On the 3rd day, they brought him to the binding room. The ritual was identical to Corvus's 46 years earlier. The chanting, the inscribed wards, the throne of black iron. Darius was chained, prepared, his soul opened to the warp. Then they spoke the daemon's name, Thessakor, and it came. The daemon flooded into Darius's consciousness like boiling acid. It was rage and hunger, malice and corruption, everything terrible about the warp compressed into a single entity. And it was inside him. Forever. The seals activated. The demon was trapped. Darius screamed, a sound that echoed through the chamber for 6 hours as the binding completed. When it was done, Darius opened his eyes. They glowed with faint warp energy. "It hurts," he gasped. "Emperor, it hurts." "It always hurts," Voke said simply. "You'll learn to manage it, or you won't, and you'll fail, like most hosts do." "How long did you say Corvus lasted?" 41 years. "I won't last that long. No one could last that long." Voke showed the faintest smile. "Corvus said the same thing, yet he did. Perhaps you will too." Darius was taken to his containment cell, the same cell where Corvus had spent 4 decades. It still smelled faintly of Medicae treatments and suffering. The demon, Athasakor, raged in his mind. "Let me out! Let me free! I will burn this vessel to ash!" "No," Darius said aloud, establishing the pattern that would define the rest of his life. "You're contained. Your mind to control. I am no one's. I am eternal. I am—" "Trapped. You're trapped." Thesakor's rage intensified, battering against Darius's consciousness. The young man held firm, establishing his mental fortress, learning what Corvus had known. This was forever. This was the choice he'd made. 500 light-years away, in a record repository on Holy Terra, Corvus Tain's service file was officially closed. His name was added to the Inquisitorial Roll of Honor, a list of those who'd served and died in service to the Ordos. One name among millions, destined to be forgotten by everyone except archivists. The entry was simple. Corvus Tain, Daemonhost, served 41 years. Containment never breached. Loyalty unquestioned. Deceased. Service satisfactory. Satisfactory. 41 years of agony, of fighting a warp entity every second of every day, of losing his personality, his memories, his humanity, reduced to a single word, satisfactory. There was no ceremony, no recognition, no mourning, just a file closed and a new one opened. This was the Imperium. Individuals didn't matter, only service mattered. Corvus Tain had served. That was enough. In the warp, in the impossible spaces between reality and unreality, fragments of consciousness sometimes persisted after death. Souls that were too strong, too defined, to dissipate immediately. Corvus's soul, what remained of it, floated in the immaterium for a brief time. Just moments, perhaps, or centuries. Time had no meaning here. He was aware, barely, just enough to perceive that he was no longer trapped in flesh, no longer sharing space with Maltazon. He was free. The sensation was so alien after 41 years of imprisonment that he barely recognized it. Freedom, actual, genuine freedom from the constant war. Then the warp began to dissolve him. His soul wasn't strong enough to persist here. It lacked the psychic power to maintain coherence. He would dissipate, become part of the warp itself. Corvus didn't fight it. Welcomed it, actually. Final ending. Complete cessation. As his consciousness faded, his last coherent thought was simple. It was worth it. Not because the Imperium had recognized his sacrifice. Not because anyone would remember his name, but because for 41 years he'd contained something evil, had prevented it from hurting others, had done his duty, even when it destroyed him. That was worth it. Then he faded completely. Corvus Tain ceased to exist in any meaningful sense. His soul dispersed into the warp, joining the infinite dead. Back on the eternal vigil, Darius Cole was learning what Corvus had known. The daemon never stopped, never rested, never gave him a moment of peace. "You cannot last," Thesakor screamed. "I am eternal. You are temporary. I will outlast you." "Then you'll outlast me in a cage," Darius replied, "because I'm not letting go." "You'll break. All hosts break. Corvus Tain lasted 41 years. I'll last longer." "Impossible. Maybe. But I'm going to try." The daemon raged. Darius held firm. This was his existence now. This was his service. This was the choice he'd made. And somewhere in the warp, perhaps, Corvus's dissipating consciousness smiled. 10 years later, Darius was still serving, still containing Thesakor, still fighting the endless war. He'd lost weight, lost his healthy coloring, developed the hollow eyes and haunted expression that all Daemonhost eventually acquired. But he maintained containment perfectly. Voke was pleased. "You're performing admirably," he said during an inspection. "Perhaps you'll match Corvus's record." "I don't want to match it," Darius said quietly. "I want to exceed it. I want to prove that humans can outlast demons." An ambitious goal. Corvus gave me the goal. He showed it was possible. Now I'll show I can do even better. Thesicor laughed in his mind. "Fool, you think you're competing with a dead man? You're just delaying the inevitable." "Then I'll delay it for 50 years. Or 60. Or however long it takes." "You're insane. I learned from the best. If this dedication to duty despite impossible odds is inspiring you or horrifying you, please like this video and subscribe. Comment below if you think Darius will succeed or if he's doomed to repeat Corvus's fate. Let's remember these names together. 20 years into Darius's service, Voke received a new psyker for Daemonhost consideration. A young man named Kellen, age 24, demonstrating unusual discipline for an unsanctioned psyker. Voke made his offer. Kellen hesitated. "I need to know," Kellen said. "Your other Daemonhosts, are they still sane? Still human?" Voke gestured to a view screen, showing Darius in his containment cell. The man looked terrible, gaunt, scarred, eyes glowing with barely contained warp energy, but he was functional. "He's been serving for 20 years, Voke explained. "Maintains perfect control of his bound daemon. He's effective. But is he sane? Define sanity." "He performs his duties, maintains containment, deploys when ordered. By those measures, yes." "That's not what I asked," Buck considered. "He's not who he was, but none of us are after 20 years of service. He's adapted, survived. That's what matters." Kellen watched Darius for several minutes, saw the man sitting motionless in his cell, clearly engaged in internal warfare with his daemon. "If I accept, will I end up like him?" Kellen asked. "Eventually, if you last 20 years. And if I refuse?" "Execution. Immediate." Kellen closed his eyes. Another impossible choice. Another young psyker forced to become a weapon or die. "I accept," he said. Voke nodded. "Excellent. You'll be the 17th Daemonhost I've bound. Your predecessor, the first, lasted 41 years. He set the standard. Perhaps you'll exceed it." "What was his name?" "Corvus Tain." "Can I read his logs before the binding?" "If you wish, though I'm not sure why you'd want to." "Because," Kallon said quietly, "I want to understand what I'm agreeing to. I want to hear from someone who actually lived it." Voke provided access. Kellen spent his 3 days of preparation listening to Corvus's voice. 41 years of logs, degrading from coherent speech to fragments, documenting the slow erosion of personality under constant internal warfare. The final log was haunting. Year 41. Still contained, still serving. Everything else gone. Just this. Just containment. Forever. The days, months, years. Calland listened to it 3 times, trying to understand the mindset of someone who'd endured that long. Then came his own binding. His own daemon. His own beginning of the endless war. The cycle continued. 50 years after Corvus Tain's death, Inquisitor Voke retired. He'd served for 90 years, bound 32 Daemonhosts during his career. Of those, 18 were still in service, maintained by his successors. 14 had failed, either lost control and were executed or died from the physical strain. Corvus Tain remained the longest-serving host in his record. 41 years of perfect containment. As Vok prepared to enter a monastery for his final years, he reviewed his most successful host's files one final time. He paused on Corvus's entry, read through the decades of logs, the documentation of slow psychological dissolution, the final moments. For the first time in his long career, Inquisitor Matthias Vok felt something approaching regret. Not for binding the hosts, that was necessary, justified by inquisitorial authority and the demands of defending humanity, but for the suffering, for the decades of agony each host endured. Was it worth it? He asked the empty room. No answer came, only the sterile hume of the ship's systems. He closed the file, moved on to the next, and the next. 32 names. 32 individuals who'd been conscripted into service as living prisons for warp entities. All for the Imperium, all necessary, all justified. Vok closed his data slate and left his office for the final time. The cycle continued. 100 years after Corvus Tane's death, a young inquisitorial acolyte named Marius was researching Daemonhost protocols. He found Corvus's file in the archives, one of thousands, but notable for the service duration. 41 years, the longest recorded in that particular Inquisitor's service. Marius read the logs, fascinated and horrified. This man had suffered for 4 decades, lost his personality, his memories, his humanity, all to contain a single daemon. Was it worth it? Marius calculated. 41 years of containment, estimated 250 deployments, approximately 7,000 enemies killed, immeasurable prevention of demonic corruption by keeping Maltazon imprisoned. By the numbers, yes, Corvus Tane's service had been worth the cost. But Marius couldn't shake the feeling that reducing a human life to numerical value was itself a form of corruption. He closed the file, continued his research, and made a private note. If ever offered the choice to become a Daemonhost, refuse. Death is preferable. The cycle continued. 200 years after Corvus Tane's death, his file was archived in long-term storage. His name appeared in only one document, a statistical analysis of Daemonhost longevity, where he was listed as Subject 4477, service duration 41 years, cause of termination, organ failure. Not a person, just a data point. 300 years after his death, even that reference was deleted during a database purge to free storage space. Corvus Tane was completely forgotten, as if he'd never existed. But somewhere in the Imperium, Daemonhosts still served, still fought their eternal internal wars, still sacrificed their humanity to contain warp entities. The cycle continued, always continued, would continue for as long as the Imperium needed weapons against chaos. And occasionally, in the rare moments when the warp thinned, some of those hosts would perceive an echo, a whisper of consciousness that shouldn't exist anymore. A voice saying, "Hold on, it's possible. I lasted 41 years. You can too." Whether it was actually Corvus Tane's soul, somehow persisting despite dissipation, or just a psychological manifestation of their own determination, none could say. But it helped. In the darkest moments, when the demons nearly broke through, when surrender seemed inevitable, that whisper would come, "Hold on." And they would. If this story of sacrifice and endurance has moved you, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment telling me whether you think Corvus Tane's sacrifice mattered, or if he was just another forgotten soldier in an endless war, because someone needs to remember his name, even if the Imperium forgot. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And in that war, some warriors fight enemies they can see. Others fight enemies within themselves. Corvus Tane fought that internal war for 41 years, lost his humanity in the process, was forgotten by history. But he never surrendered, never let the demon win, never stopped serving. That was his legacy. Not glory, not recognition, not even memory. Just service, pure unending, destructive service to an Imperium that never knew his name. And in the end, perhaps that's what mattered most. Not whether anyone remembered, but whether the duty was done. Corvus Tain's duty was done. The demon stayed contained. The Imperium remained protected. That was enough.